So which bass should you buy? Because there are so many choices. But whilst there are a load of basses on the market, most of them are variations on the same three types of basses. The P bass, which has a split coil type pickup and has its origins with a Fender Precision bass. The J bass, which has two single coil pickups and has its origins with the Fender Jazz bass. And an active bass, which has a humbucker style pickup and has its origins with the Music Man Stingray. And the crazy thing is that all these basses were designed by the same guy. Today I'm going to go through the typical sounds you're going to get from these three basses and give you some tips on which bass might be the best one for you. Let me know in the comments what type of bass you're playing. The P bass. The P bass pickup has a split coil design. This particular bass, the Yamaha BBP 3.4, also has a jazz bass pickup in the bridge, and this configuration is called a PJ bass. The P is for the precision bass pickup and the J is for the jazz bass pickup. But today I'm only going to focus on the sound from the precision bass pickup, so I'll turn the front pickup volume all the way up and the bridge pickup volume all the way down. So let's hear what it sounds like. The P-bass sound by itself doesn't have as much treble and is less well defined as the other basses that I'm going to go through today, but it sits really well in a mix and is known for its full bass sound. Because of how well it sits in the sonic space for bass guitar, it's really popular for recordings to this day. For that classic 1960s soul sound, it's the bass of choice, especially with flat wound strings. And you can check out James Jameson's work, and it's been used on the Iron Maiden albums with Steve Harris, so it can definitely do rock. And Pino Palladino played a P-bass on Voodoo by D'Angelo, which is always on those lists of incredible sounding albums. For slap, you can use a P-bass, although it's not the classic bright sounding slap sound that we're used to hearing, and here's a playthrough of what that sounds like. For you at home, the P-bass is a good choice if you're home recording or if you're in a band and the bass is playing more of a kind of functional role rather than slap or epic bass solos. A common criticism of the P-bass is that it doesn't sound great on its own, but it sounds amazing in a mix with its fat, boxy sound. It is useful though, if you are getting a P-bass, to have a look at options with a J-bass pickup, as it does give you a much wider variety of sounds. Fender sells the very popular Fender Mustang like this one, which is short scale, making it easier to play if you have shorter arms or fingers. If you find this video helpful, please give the video a like, and that's really going to help me out. J-bass. The J-bass has two single coil pickups, so one here in the bridge and one in the neck. The pickup in the neck sounds fuller than the bridge pickup, and the bridge pickup is one that was favored by Jaco Pastorius, and to this day is the sound the bassists chase. So here's what the J-bass sounds like with the volume on both pickups all the way up and the tone rolled off a little bit. As the J-bass is brighter sounding, it's more suited to lead type playing than the P-bass. So Larry Graham, who is the father of slap bass, played a jazz bass. And then there's Marcus Miller's amazing work. Here's what slap sounds like on a J-bass. So if you want a more versatile sound, a J-bass is great because you can adjust the volume of each pickup and dial in a range of sounds. It has more treble than a P-bass, so it stands out more in a mix, but still has that more kind of natural passive bass sound, so it doesn't dominate a mix like an active bass. It's great for slap, and you can use it for rock as well, and John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, for example, played a jazz bass on those recordings with Led Zeppelin. I've said Led Zeppelin twice. What an idiot! Active bass. The most modern sounding bass of the three is an active bass, which has its origins with the Music Man Stingray. I have this Ibanez copy of a Stingray, and although it's a fraction of the cost of a real Music Man, it's the bass that I get most compliments about for its sound. The thing I love about this bass is that I can just keep the volume up and the dials in the middle and it sounds great, but if I want that little bit of extra sparkle for slap, I can just turn up this knob and I'm good to go. So that's the treble knob. Here's what slap sounds like with it. An active bass has a humbucker pickup which has an active EQ which is powered by a battery. So one thing you need to make sure is that if you're using an active bass in a gig, making sure to have a spare battery, as otherwise it would get very embarrassing.
Hey, the batteries ran out on his bass. Batteries.
This bass has 2 pickups, but the original Stingray had just 1. Active basses are known for their sparkly, zingy sound, so they can sound really fat, but also has that treble on it, so it's punchy, and it also sounds a little bit compressed. So Bernard Edwards in Chic played one, and that disco sound permeates a lot of modern funk and pop music. So for example, on Don't Start Now by Dua Lipa, the samples used on that are from an active bass. If you're playing in a funk band where the bass lines are fundamental to the sound, an active bass is great because it punches through in both the bass and treble areas that you want to stand out. If you're doing covers on YouTube, it's great as well. Davey 504 plays an active bass, as does Julia Plays Groove. Over time, I found that my active bass is the best one for my YouTube stuff because even listening to it through a smartphone kind of sounds okay. Also, with an active bass, you can plug it straight into your computer audio interface, whilst I find with a passive bass like the P and J basses, you need a DI to get the best sound out of the bass when you're recording it, like this one. The downside of an active bass is it can sound too dominant and draws too much attention to itself. So in situations where the bass needs to play a less upfront role, it can get a bit in the way. But what if I want the sound of a P bass, a J bass, and an active bass all in the one bass? Is that possible? Well, these days there are basses like this Fender Precision Bass Deluxe, which has a P bass pickup in the neck, a J bass pickup in the bridge, and a switch that allows you to move it between active and passive mode. So it could really give you a wide variety of sounds. I hope this little bit of analysis has helped you. Subscribe here for more content. And a big thanks to all my Patreons, especially my VIP patron, and also check out these videos.